Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar session. If you just go to the next slide, please. So my name is Stuart King. I'm the Good Practice Manager for Human Performance and Power Systems, and I'll be hosting today's, or moderating today's session. Today's webinar is the third, in fact, of a series of webinars that we are running throughout the year. The webinars are all on different topics around learning from incidents, with today's webinar focused on line of fire incidents in particular. Our next webinar is on the 28th of April, and that's around leadership in accident investigation and learning from incidents. The webinars are, you can register for the webinars in advance from the Energy Institute website, but all of the webinars are in support of the Energy Institute Toolbox web app. And they're really to try to promote the web app and get people, more people using it and aware of it. It's a free web app which is designed to share learning from incidents, such as on line of fire incidents, driving incidents, hot work lifting, all different types of activities, with frontline staff and with HSSE managers and others who need to learn from those incidents. So the web address is on the screen. It's available in 10 different languages, and I think as of today we've got about 300 pieces of content available in most of those languages and nearly 500 in English, so do check that out. Just a bit of webinar housekeeping. So the webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available in a few days' time, and that'll be available either on YouTube or from the Toolbox app itself. All participants are muted, except of course for the presenters. We will be having a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, so around 4 o'clock UK time. Please do post your questions into the Q&A function. You'll see that there's a Q&A box with a few speech bubbles. Please don't post your questions into the chat because we won't be looking at that. But if you post your questions into the Q&A function, we will be trying to answer as many of those questions as we can at the end of the session. At the end of the session as well, I believe there will be a link to a survey that you can take. Please do give us feedback on the webinar so we can improve them in the future. If you're a member of the Energy Institute, don't forget that you can use the webinar as part of your continual professional development. Go to the web address on screen to fill in the relevant form to do that. If you're not a member of the Energy Institute, then, well, consider becoming a member, but otherwise you can just follow your regular CPD processes for whatever organisation you're a member of. Yeah, so you get the most out of today's webinar. Next slide, please. So just a very quick introduction to who the Energy Institute is. So we are a professional body for the global energy industry. We develop good practice, knowledge, and promote professionalism across the depth and breadth of the energy sector. We're all about bringing together expertise to address urgent global energy challenges, including such as the energy transition to low carbon economy. Next slide, please. We are a membership body. We have about 20,000 individual members based all over the globe. So do consider joining if you're not a member. Well, you know, we're a professional body. We're all here about developing your professional expertise. We have various different levels of membership, including things like chartered engineer, chartered scientist, etc. If you're interested to know more about that, please do go to our website, energyinst.org. Next slide, please. We also produce a lot of good practice for industry. So we have a website, publishing.energyinst.org. We have hundreds of good practice guidance documents there, included on human factors topics. If that's your interest, process safety. We've got programs on hydrogen, solar, battery power, battery storage, I should say, sorry, environment, health, etc., etc. So lots of good practice there, and a lot of it is made freely available as well. Next slide, please. We also have a trading team at the Energy Institute. Do check out the website if you're interested in trading on risk management or energy management. We have we launched very recently the Human Performance Pathway, which is a qualification in conjunction with the Chartered Institute of Economics and Human Factors, which includes a free e-learn and optional follow-ups as well. So do check that out if that is of interest. Next slide, please. Right, so with the obligatory slides out the way, we can get into today's topic, and I'm proud to introduce today's speakers. So we have three speakers lined up today. The first is Kirsty Walker. So Kirsty is the Global Project Manager, HSSE Systems and Practices for Schlumberger. Kirsty also chairs the IOGP's Safety Data Subcommittee and the Life-Saving Rules Task Force. Our second speaker is Tijs Koerts. So Tijs is the Operations Director for the European Process Safety Centre and a Senior Process Safety Consultant for Koerts Consultancy. He gained extensive process safety experience at DuPont, GE Plastics and Lyondell Basell Industries, where he worked with all kinds of hazardous processes in both technical, operational and business roles. And our last speaker is Nick Hough. So Nick is the technical advisor for IMCA, that's the International Marine Contractors Association. Nick primarily supports the IMCA Health, Safety, Security and Environment Committee and the Offshore Survey Remote Systems and ROV divisions. So without further ado, I'd like to Kirsty, if you'd like to turn your camera on, and look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thanks, Stuart. So as Stuart said, I'm here today representing the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers, or the IOGP, where I chair their safety subcommittee. If you can go to the next one, please. So the IOGP has been reporting safety performance data from member companies, and this is all on a voluntary basis. Member companies submit their safety performance indicator data on an annual basis, and that's been collected since 1985. So you can see from the graph here that the fatal accident rate over that time period has been reducing pretty significantly, but we're still not achieving sustainable zero fatalities. So we do aim to learn from the incidents that have been reported on behalf of the member companies. If you can go to the next, thank you. So within the IOGP Safety Data Subcommittee, we look at the safety performance indicator data that we request from the member companies. That represents the operating oil and gas companies or energy companies, plus all of their contractors. And there's normally around 50 to 52 companies that report on an annual basis with their employee and contractor data. So with the fatality reporting, we report that by category to give us an indication of what happened, by activity to look at a little bit, again, what happened, what kind of activities were being conducted when the fatal incident occurred, by causal factor to give us an indication of why it happened, and also by IOGP life-saving rule to look at what we have been able to do to have prevented this incident. If you can go to the next one, please, Alex. Thank you. So all the data I'm going to be presenting today, with one caveat, is available on the IOGP Safety Data website, which is data.iogp.org. This is all publicly available information. And on that website, you get the safety performance indicators reports from the last few years. But you can also drill right down into the fatal incident to look at the narrative description, the what went wrong, the causal factor, and also get the activity, the cause, and the life-saving rule for each of those incidents. Now, the caveat is that for the 2021 data that I'll be presenting today, that has not yet been finalized. The 2021 Safety Performance Indicators report should be available within the next month or so. Next slide, please, Alex. Thank you. So within the Safety Performance Indicator data, As I said, we can look at things in terms of the categories and activities. So the data analysis that I've done for this particular presentation is from 2005 to 2021. This includes 1,085 fatalities in 817 fatal incidents. So as you can see here, we can slice and dice this information by activity and by category. So it shows that for the activity side, land transportation is our largest category of activity causes for fatal incidents, and maintenance, inspection, and testing coming in at 18%. On the category side, this is where we look a little bit more about the mechanics of what went wrong. So struck by, 36%, and then caught in or under or between, excluding dropped objects, 18%, with falls from height being 11%. So it gives you an idea of the kind of the activities and the categories that are used within the IOGP collection. Can I have the next slide, please, Alex? Thank you. So for that same time period, for the same incident, we can also see what happens in terms of the life-saving rules and which ones applied to those particular fatal incidents. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the fatal incidents. On the right-hand side, you can see the same data divided by the actual number of fatalities. Line of fire is our highest category of life-saving rule, with 194 fatal incidents, resulting in 197 fatalities. So for the line of fire life-saving rule, it tends to be a one-to-one relationship between fatal incidents and fatalities. Whereas for some of the other type of activities categories, for example, like if you have an air transport incident, you may have one incident, but 10, 12, 16 maybe actual fatalities involved in that incident. So we look at these things both ways, both in terms of the number of incidents and the number of fatalities. Can I have the next slide, please? Thanks, Alex. So you can see here the life-saving rules by year accumulated from 2005 to 2021, showing again that line of fire life-saving rule is by far our highest contributor to the overall life-saving rules. Now, when we say here that there were 245 incidents out of that 817 which were other issues. This is because with the life-saving rules are intended to look at predominantly personal safety. There may be some aspects of the life-saving rules, such as line of fire, which apply to some process safety events, but these are very much on the kind of personal or occupational type safety incidents. But we also have a number of categories in there, like assault and violent act, or air crash, air transport, where a life-saving rule, there can be absolutely no expectation on the individual involved in an air crash to have implemented any life-saving rule to have prevented that incident. Okay, have the next one, please, Alex. Thank you. So for the activities and categories that relate to all of those fatal incidents that were within that life-saving rule category. So we're now looking at 197 fatalities in 194 fatal incidents. And you can see that the largest chunk of that pie on the left-hand side for the activity comes from drilling, workover and well services, closely followed by construction, commissioning and decommissioning, with lifting, crane operations, rigging and deck operations pretty close in third position, with land transport as well, a significant contributor. On the right-hand side, you can see by category, we have 92 of these events involved struck by, and 85 of them caught in and under or between. So we'll dive down a little bit deeper into that data again just now. But one question that I'm quite often asked from the members of the IOGP Safety Committee is whether or not there's any particular geographic influence on fatalities or fatal incidents, and in particular around line of fire. So on the left-hand side here, you can see all of the fatal incidents plotted geographically. On the right-hand side, the ones related to the line of fire life-saving rule. And as you can see by the depth of color on both of those charts, that there is really no specific geographic influence over this particular metric. If you can move to the next one, please, Alex. Thank you. So one of the largest categories we have within line of fire is this working around mobile equipment. And this is where the information that we've got in the narrative descriptions, the causal factors of what went wrong, really helps us to try and understand a little bit more about what actually happened. So out of these 57 fatal incidents, 31 of them involved trucks, so heavy vehicles. 21 of them involved construction equipment. This may be bulldozers, JCBs, diggers, road graders, road rollers, that kind of equipment. One involved a forklift, one car, one train, one bus, and one crane, which was not actively being used as a crane at the time, but it was essentially just still a piece of mobile equipment. So although in many instances we actually engage a signaller, a banksman, to guide vehicles, we've seen that 11 of these people who were actually put in place to prevent people getting impacted by this type of vehicle have themselves actually succumbed to fatal injuries as a result of their position in relation to the mobile equipment. 14 incidents involved reversing. 10 of these were trucks, 3 construction equipment and 1 forklift. Maneuvering is another aspect where people get sometimes crushed between 2 pieces of mobile equipment or between mobile equipment and a stationary object. 7 involved unintended movement. These could have been prevented by the application of either a parking brake or chocks. In 3 cases, the vehicle itself was completely unattended. There was nobody actually driving it. The vehicle was moving on it under its own devices. And 4 involved impact by either a ramp or a tailgate, generally involving loading operations. One other one really was related to pressure release from a tire. So what did we do in terms of the lessons learned? Well, we went back to the IOGP Safety Committee, who then engaged the Land Transport Subcommittee to develop a recommended practice around mobile construction equipment. This is publicly available. It's free of charge. You just need to download it from the IOGP website. And this document itself gives advice on risk-based traffic management plans, first move forward, i.e. avoiding the need to reverse, providing space for maneuvering, use of dedicated parking areas, chocks and immobilization devices, and also the use of signalmen or banksmen. But this is an area where we really can benefit from the use of technology rather than having signalmen or banksmen. Then we can use cameras and proximity sensors on some of these types of mobile equipment. If you can move to the next one, please, Alex. Now, another aspect that we've tried to really bring the learning from the incidents that have been reported is in the development of our start work checks. These were released at the end of 2021, back in December, and there are 13 of them. These are intended to supplement the IOGP's life-saving rules by giving people a very simple checklist to conduct before they undertake certain types of activity. And there are 13 of these, one of which is working around mobile equipment. The checks are very, very basic. You know, mobile equipment parking areas, travel paths have been identified for the work site, making sure that controls are in place to keep pedestrians away from mobile equipment, making sure the equipment itself has been inspected, load stability, potential for unplanned movement has been assessed, and that controls and safeguards are in place to prevent impact with workers or objects, and also that controls are in place to prevent unintended movement of mobile equipment and or loads. And you can see from the previous data that we've tried to incorporate those lessons into the start work check. Now, another aspect of line of fire is in relation to marine activities, and I'm sure Nick will be giving you some more information on that later in the session. But here we have 5 related to marine handling, anchor handling, 3 related to marine mooring ropes, 2 unsecured cargo, 2 specific to actual waves themselves, another one on cargo handling, and 1 more on the marine hose. So 14 fatalities and 14 fatal incidents. And we do also have a start work check on working on or near water. So some of the other key ones that have come up through the line of fire data analysis is looking at stored energy, energized equipment, and dropped objects. Now, we do have a specific activity for our category for dropped objects that was introduced in 2019. And we do have some specific data on dropped objects, but these are the ones that have been assigned the line of fire life-saving rule specifically. So for the stored energy or energized equipment, we've had 6 fatal incidents involving wire under tension that were not marine related, 6 involving impact by beam pumps, 3 entanglements and rotating equipment, 1 involved a winch under tension, a stored energy release when cutting pipe, a rotating pump, and a rolling object. On the dropped object side, mainly from the seismic part of the industry, 10 were related to trees, 8 during deliberate tree felling activities. And IAGC, the International Association of Geophysical Contractors, has identified that tree felling is actually one of their major causes of fatal injury within the land seismic industry. Tubulars come up a lot, dropped tubulars, 4 in this case in relation to dropped objects. 4 where objects were being manually supported by people, 3 involving rig equipment, 2 involving mechanical lifting, but there is a specific life-saving rule for mechanical lifting, which are not included here. A couple involving pipelines and a lack of support, and 3 involving the removal of securing clamps, bolts, or other securing devices. So during the dismantling, the people have removed these securing aspects, and as a result, they have been in the line of fire, resulting in fatal injuries. So a few more there that you can see with gates and roller doors. On the mechanical lifting side, these are again just the ones in the line of fire life-saving rule category. 7 involved a suspended load, 3 resulted from failure of lifting equipment, 2 from load swinging, 2 from the use of construction equipment for lifting. And this is construction equipment that was not designed for lifting, for example, putting slings onto the bucket of a digger. Loading, unloading, again, a lot of these were tubulars. A particularly nasty one where an operator got caught between a boom truck and the boom itself. And the rest were related to loading activities with skid mounting equipment, trailer ramps, and a forklift operation. Okay, next one, please, Alex. So the causal factors also give us another opportunity to look at line of fire from a different direction. So from the causal factors that have been assigned for these fatal incidents, we've had 110 assignments of that improper position in the line of fire. That's 6.2% of our fatal incidents from 2010 to 2020. We only started requesting the line of fire data in terms of causal factors in 2010. If you can move to the next one, please, Alex. And in particular for the mechanical lifting, out of 45 mechanical lifting related fatalities, 24 of them had improper position line of fire. So it really does emphasize the need to manage access to areas where mechanical lifting is being conducted. Really manage your red zones. They absolutely do save lives. If you can move to the next one, please, Alex. Thank you. So process safety events. I've put a couple of slides in here about process safety events as well, knowing that Tijs was going to be talking later. So again, the analysis of this data is what was used to develop what IOGP call the process safety fundamentals. So this is data from 2007 to 2016. Where we did an analysis on 56 process safety events. These are all tier 1 process safety events that resulted in a fatality. Now, these fatalities are either ignited or struck by events, almost half of them being ignited, the other half pretty much struck by. And these have resulted in 128 fatalities. But the ignited events have resulted in 75% of the fatalities, even though they were 50% of the actual fatal incidents. And almost all of the fatal incidents involving 4 or more people having been killed have all been related to ignited process safety events. But a third of these are during drilling, workover and well services, but less than 20% of them during normal production type operations. And again, the data that we've looked at from the causal factors for process safety events, this is data from 2010 to 2019. Line of fire, you can see, is pretty high up on the causal factors in terms of those incidents that have been reported to IOGP during that time period. And this went to inform the development of the process safety fundamentals, which are slightly different from the IOGP life-saving rules. The life-saving rules are very much for the individuals involved in a particular activity or task and the actions that they can take to help keep themselves and others safe. Whereas the process safety fundamentals are more around the kind of organizational type responsibilities, although there is an individual contribution aspect to them. And these, again, the IOGP process safety fundamentals are available free of charge from the IOGP website. The links are on the slides. So you can see here from those pressure release incidents that we've had 18 fatalities in 17 incidents. The majority of them have been as a result of debris that has been expelled during a pressure release or explosion. There's also been quite 3 related specifically to pigging operations, 3 related specifically to pressure testing, 1 related to a well control incident, and 1 related to a well control flash fire. So again, we've got quite a wide range of incidents categorized as line of fire within the process safety data reporting as well. And again, IOGP do report separately process safety event indicators and have been doing so since 2014. All these reports are available from the IOGP website if you are interested in any further information on those. And next slide, please, Alex. So if you do have any particular questions, do please put them in the Q&A, and we'll try to answer those later. And there's some contact information here as well. If you would like to contact IOGP, then Mariana Carvalho is the person to get in touch with. Okay. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. So I've certainly got a number of questions I'd like to ask you at the end. So just a reminder to the audience, if you've got questions, please do post your questions in the Q&A box just below. So our next speaker then is Tijs. So Tijs, if you'd like to begin.
Stuart, yeah, thank you for the introduction, and Kirsty, I think it was an outstanding introduction already on which I can build further. Let's just go to the next slide. Thank you so much. I am leading the European Process Safety Center, which is an industrial platform for hazardous chemical companies in Europe to talk to each other and learn together. It was established after the Bhopal incident, where and that incident was, of course, very bad for the city of Bhopal. It was also bad for the company which was involved there, Union Carbide, which ceased to exist after this single incident. And finally, it was, of course, very bad for the reputation of the chemical industry, which then came together and said, we should better protect society and do that together. And basically that's still the Bhopal legacy. So we have a network. It's a legitimate network. We are allowed to talk to each other on process safety, which is chemical technical safety aspects, and the only thing we're doing is sharing of best practices, maybe some benchmarking, but sharing of best practices and help each other to do so. Yeah, let's go one more slide further. I want to Kirsty already gave you a very good thing inside of that. How did we went the pathway of safety? And what helped us a lot was the life-saving rules, and all companies have defined that pretty well. And on top of that, we felt the need to develop something which is called the process safety fundamentals. And here I focus a little bit on the difference why we feel that need is really helpful in case you have some hazardous chemicals on your site. Here the thing is, and I'm going a little bit to the differences in these three. There's a strong focus of avoiding injuries and fatalities in the occupational safeties, in the life-saving rules, while the process safety fundamentals go in avoid loss of chemical. It's very often called loss prevention. So that's the key focus. The HSE domain here is everybody is involved there. These are pretty obvious, simple rules like buckle up when you're driving. If you work at height, you are aligned. Straightforward rules, while here it's involving the people which are really involved in the hazardous chemical operations, and typically these are the operators and the mechanical people, maintenance people involved there. Yeah, it's a set of simple rules, the life-saving rules. Which basically people say you either do it or you do not work in our environment. So pretty rigid. You will see that the process safety fundamentals are more complex principles and straight away cannot always be fully applied. In case of design issue doesn't allow, for example, full double block and bleed. Then these discussions and people typically cannot fulfill all the rules. These things need to be understood, and you need to have a good discussion how you solve these cases. And this is much more a thing of developing competency awareness on these aspects than saying hey, you do it this way or you don't do it. And then finally, you'll see that the implementation method is very rigid for the golden rules, the life-saving rules, and that really helps. I mean, if you buckle up, you save life, you know that. And here we'll see that it's not a set of new rules to fire operators. It's just guidance to get in good contact with them and having good discussions on raising awareness how to solve complex operational situations. So let us go. So let us go in the pictograms that we developed. You see, these were all developed in line with OGP at about the same time. But not only from oil and gas producers, but also the chemical industry was involved here. And we typically said, process safety, we have already the management system. So things like hazard identification, process hazard analysis, like management of change, incident investigations. All these principles are developed well, described well, and the booklets are there. So we need to really go the next layer and go down to the people that cause these incidents. Causing is maybe not the right word, but are involved in these incidents, which are very often operators, operational people, and maintenance people. Maybe a little bit design, but these people have been offsite for a long time. So we need to get fundamental principles to guide people on process safety excellence. That's basically it. And I like to show you a few of those. I hope that most of you recognize, and maybe we shouldn't go in all details, but because we focus on one today. But here you see double isolation. If you have a hazardous chemical substance in a pipeline and you have a single valve, you cannot rely that your single valve is going to work because it can leak. And that's what you learn in operations. So you need a second protection layer here, and in principle, a flange is very often applied. But you can also have a cap which you screw on top of there, as long as it is in line with the pipe specification. So you see these things are pretty much straight downward to the operational handling. This is about draining, where in the oil and gas you have very often water in the tank, and then the oil is on top, and the water should be drained, but then you need to close this valve in time. Because after a while the oil get out. And having said that, there's a golden rule, like never leave a drain alone. But you can easily say that, but if the draining takes you 24 hours, then this guy is not staying here for 24 hours. You understand that. So there are a couple of things which make that a difficult process, and then there's good guidance that can help you. This is about removing plugged equipment. There are many big incidents where people trying to remove plugged equipment, and if you remove this plug, you see you need to open your installation, and if the plug is being removed, then the hazardous material can flow out, and many hazardous incidents did occur in that, and people tend to have bad guidance on how to remove how to free plugged equipment, and operators tend to become very creative, not always fully seeing the complete hazards of doing things, and in the end of the day, if you don't remove this plug, your equipment is dead. So sooner or later you need to do something. Today we will talk, and I see the last line is following up, but we will talk about do not stand in the line of fire. Let's get to the next slide and talk a little bit further on that. So one of the 18 ones that I just showed you, and by the way, I forgot to mention, just like OGP, we have a nice booklet where these things are written in there. It's a little bit the guidance how to use them. It is the picture of all the pictograms, and then on each of these pictograms we have an explanation. And that booklet is easy to obtain. It's free of charge. It's in several languages. Just look at the website of EPSC, and that is epsc.be. It's in Belgium. So if you type in epsc.be and then you click single time on the process safety fundamentals, then you open the booklet, and then you can do whatever you want, and you can also get a version in other key European languages like German and France and Italian. The way we describe, so we have this pictogram which hopefully gives you the picture straight away. This person, if it opens the manhole and there's residual pressure over here, then that is extremely dangerous. People don't realize, but if this is a full square meter surface, then if you have 20 millibars here, then it opens with a force of 2,000 kilo. That even with 20 millibars on that surface, you kill the operator, because the manhole will swing open with a force where the person can die. And of course, staying out of the line of fire is not an easy thing to do here, because you need to open it. You need to remove these bolts, and after you have removed the bolts, then very often there's residual polymer in here, so it is stuck. And only if the polymer suddenly loses, then that's where your problem is. So a number of people have been severely injured in this situation or killed, and And it starts with awareness that even the very low pressure in here can have very large consequences. And also then the question is, what are the good practice how to do that? And all the operators which do this work, they have some tips and tricks doing that. So what we do here is we explain in a single sentence the hazards. Then we say what are the challenges in the field that you're having, and then the things are here. It's options to get it right, and it sounds a little bit soft, but it's really about awareness. It's really about suggesting suggesting the good best practices. It's not you have to do it like this, because sometimes you cannot follow it all the time that you have. So here, for example, in this case of this manhole, it's good practice that there's a kind of lock that if it swings open, that it only swings open for 5 centimeters and then it's blocked again. But you need to have that lock installed. If not, then you have that hazardous situation. So here you see the challenges in the field is really like your manhole gets stuck, and the manhole is nearly always stuck. And then how do you open it after you have removed the bolts? The other thing is that you never know where the relief points are in your chemical factory and when they will open. So many people are used to walk wherever they want in the plant, and they should at least not walk in the pathway of when process safety valves are getting opened. And then let's go a little bit to the options of going right, because we're talking about staying in the line, stay out of the line of fire as our main things. So it's a lot of it is identification. Identify your hazardous points where you can have releases. So especially steam traps or steam releases. Make sure you do not walk when you can have a sudden steam release. I know many operators who got steam on their ankles and just putting their shoes at the wrong location. Make coloring the floor is a good thing there, and a helpful thing. Understanding the release location and remove yourself is of course an important thing, and understand where the process safety valves are. Also, of course, make sure that the process safety valves go to a safe location, and a safe location is a location where, of course, persons do not stand. And having said that, and everybody understands that, if you do an audit, it's probably very easy to walk on a site and find a few process safety valves that do release in areas where people can be present. Keep people out of the heat radiation zone of a flare. Also, a flare is a sudden release. If you press the emergency button, the heat release is enormous, and make sure that people stay far away from that radiated heat and can go to a safe location in time. Opening installations is a thing, and especially the first opening of a flange. We learn mechanics and say, hey, which are the first bolt to untight, and this is the first thing they should learn. Automatically you would take the bolts that are close to you, but please take the bolts which are far away from you, and during your lifetime this will save you being sprayed with chemicals several times. Why? Because operation, for one or another reason, is not always able to make the things chemical free and free of pressure, or you might be at the wrong location, opening wrong equipment that is a hazardous thing. So the way we would like you to use these in a safety or a toolbox, just take one of these things and have an intense discussion with your people on site, your mechanics, your operators, and go over these options to get it it right. And if you discuss these, you hear all the stories from them, where they had trouble and what they did and when they got sprayed. And I'll tell you, you will learn a lot of new things, and then you can agree together on how you want to fix it in that in those situations. Okay. Let us go to one more, a little bit last one. What we did is EPSC is offering you learning sheets. So we take a typical incident in the chemical industry that happened in most of the time in Europe. Have one of our member companies said we had an incident where we want to share some of the learnings. Last year, these learning sheets are made available in about 15 languages. So most European languages are being covered right now. And if you want to get them, just press epsc.be again. This is the website. You can go there and use them. You even can register yourself, so automatically each month these learning sheets are being sent to you. And in this case, what we had here, so last year what we did, we related the incidents to one of the process safety fundamentals. And here a very typical thing is was being done. A new part of the refinery was started. They used an old pipeline, an existing pipeline. They cleaned the pipeline, and then they started to use the pipeline for transferring naphtha. And naphtha is extremely flammable, for transferring naphtha to the unit. Now here you see the problem. In that unit, one of the drains was still open. So they start using equipment which was not closed, and they did not validate here. And then the thing is, what are the process safety fundamentals that should have helped you here? And a very important one is validate leak tightness. That means that as soon as you're going to put hazardous chemicals in an installation that has been opened, you first validate that the system is leak tight. You put a little bit nitrogen in there, and you validate. You do a pressure hold test, and you know the pressure stays in there. So this is very critical thing that you do that. That was not done here, and they didn't discover that the system was not leak tight. And the other thing is, before you start a transfer of a pump, the thing is walk the line. And also in OGP, this is an important one. Before you start a transfer of a pump, before you start the pump at transferring a hazardous chemical from A to B, then validate that the complete pipeline is good, and of course the drains should be reviewed in that walk the line. So that's a little bit the story. The good news is that we're trying to include these learning sheets as well in the EI toolbox. So also from there on in the future, you should be able to get these learnings. So for me, this is thank you for your attention, and looking forward to answer some of your questions.
Thank you very much, Tijs. So just a reminder, questions in the Q&A function. We'll be taking questions in about 20 minutes. So Nick, over to you.
Confirming you can hear me then, I guess you'll tell me if you can't. Okay, thank you very much. If you could go to the first slide, please. I think it should just be an opening slide. Thank you very much. I heard a story from a friend of mine a number of years ago, a plumber, and he was grinding a job. Had a little job and he was doing some grinding on it. So got the old angle grinder out and grinding away. And he finished the job, and he took his gauntlets off to have a look at the job. And there was just a tiny little burr, left on the job. And so he picked up the grinder again, and he tried to repair that and tried to fix it. And he's still got the line down his finger where the grinder slipped because he didn't put his gauntlets back on. Hold on, I think we've gone a bit too fast there, but thank you. Yeah, if you can drop back a bit, if you would, please. Yeah, I'd like to thank Kirsty and Tijs for going first. There's been quite a lot of learnings for both of us. So my presentation today brings a brief look at line of fire incidents or line of fire injuries and some of the trends visible and some of the ways IMCA helps its members in addressing the challenge of stopping our people getting in the line of fire. One of the most effective tools we've developed in the last 5 years at IMCA is a series of short videos, which has just been trialed just a minute ago, and no more than 3 or 4 minutes long, which speak directly to our crews on matters of the greatest importance. Are you prepared to work safely? So what I propose now is we'll just watch one of those videos on line of fire, just a couple of minutes, if you would, please.
Getting caught in the line of fire, that is, being struck by or caught between two objects or entangled in machinery, can result in serious injury or even death. Watch out for potential pinch points. Know how to avoid being in the line of fire. If you're not concentrating, if you're tired, distracted, or rushing the job, your attention could wander. You may not realize you're standing in a place where you could be struck by or caught between objects that might come together. You're in the line of fire. The same thing can happen if you're not properly trained or prepared for the task, or if you're working alone or visibility is poor. Don't work on unsafe or uncertified equipment which doesn't have the right safeguards. If the job involves moving or rotating machinery, stand well back. Wear the correct PPE. If you've got long hair, tie it back. Take off any jewelry and don't wear loose-fitting clothes. Make sure there are guards in place to prevent contact with any moving parts. Before starting a machine, know how to stop it. Be sure you know how the machine works and keep your fingers, hands and limbs well away from its moving parts. Can the machine be effectively isolated? Can it be locked and tagged out? When involved in lifting operations or near moving equipment, wear high visibility clothes. Be careful handling slings and strops and follow the correct procedures. If they're suddenly put under tension by a lift, your fingers can get caught between them and the load. Remember, don't place yourself in the line of fire. Always be aware of the sea state. Rolling and pitching can make opening and closing doors, hatches, lids and gates hazardous. Stay alert, keep your balance, and don't stand between moving and fixed objects. Are you prepared?
Thank you. Next slide then, please. What you see there is it's a screen grab of the accompanying pocket card, which is available with the video. If you could go on to the next slide then. Thank you. Just take a step back first. IMCA is the leading trade association representing marine contractors and the associated supply chain in offshore marine construction. So we're building stuff offshore. Doesn't matter what we're building, whether it's windmills or whether it's oil and gas equipment. So 700 odd members, and they're playing a key role in offshore oil and gas and renewable energy construction across something like 65 different countries. And primarily that's engineering, construction, installation of those wind farms and hydrocarbon facilities. Our mission then is to improve performance in the marine contracting industry. And we do that through conferences, through seminars, and a big network of committees doing a great deal of work, through dialogue matters like this kind of webinar at the minute with regulators, oil companies and renewable energy companies, and by promoting areas of common interest: health, safety, quality, the environment, and technical standards. And there's a large library of technical and operational guidance which is available to members. If you go to the next slide, please. Safety is at the heart of IMCA's work. That includes safety flashes, of which more in a minute, safety statistics, along with IOGP, we are collecting those from contracting members at the minute, bulletins, briefings and publications, and safety promotional materials with 15 short, excellent videos on with the theme, are you prepared to work safely? Line of Fire is only one of them, and I recommend them, as well as some longer videos. All of them are available at free to air on YouTube. If you go on then, please. Thank you. So safety flashes. I look after safety flashes They disseminate important information on incidents and on potential hazards and the lessons we learn from them to help incidents happening again elsewhere in the industry. And we've been doing safety flashes since the late 90s, and I personally have edited and published pretty much every one of them for the last 15 years or so. And after a while, you start to notice trends, you start to notice things emerging. There's an echo in here, we might say. Now, Kirsty was right earlier to point out some of the synergies between the IOGP data and the marine side. The line of fire causes that are evergreen. If only it weren't necessary to have to say that. Mooring, lifting, release of stored energy in various places, the same patterns do emerge. Now, I encourage members to send me information on safety flashes, and we'll publish it anonymously. And these are just some of the principles I'm outlining when we do that. We're about the safety story. I can't publish everything, but we are about, as a certain amount of journalism involved, we are about trying to publish what we can to raise standards and get incidents that are actually of impact, that have high impact. And we're talking about plain English. We're not going to commence operations when we can start work. We do look for simple steps. What happened? Why did it happen? What were the causes? What do we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? And a key learning that's starting to come through at the minute is not only what went wrong, but if we want to prevent unwanted incidents, we might want not to change what we did wrong, but reinforce what we did right. And that's something we're looking at now. What went right? Why did this go well? Why have all of us finished this with 10 fingers? Next slide, please. This is by way of an illustration then. IMCA and its members are aligned to IOGP's life-saving rules. So our members, they're not obliged to make use of them, but we do strongly encourage standardization and common industry practice. And you'll see that one of those rules is line of fire, of course. Next slide, please. This slide here, oh, it's not come out so well on the font there, but we'll have to live with that. What you see there is a number of reported incidents broken down into the individual life-saving rule indicated by the member. And it's instructive. So you can see, firstly, I'd note that any given incident, LTI or whatever, can be categorized in more than one life-saving rule, or indeed no rule at all. And we see there, and that was what I've noticed from Kirsty, that bypassing safety controls was simply not an issue for fatalities. It is an issue for actual incidents and LTIs and less serious matters, which is quite an interesting thing. But line of fire comes into a very strong second place, and it's on line of fire we'll be concentrating for the rest of my presentation. If we'd move on then. We've got a line of fire situation when we didn't keep ourselves out of the line of fire, or indeed others. IOGP's excellent blue card on the right, that outlines what we did right. And what do we do wrong? We get in the line of fire if we get in the path of moving objects or vehicles. You've seen that with Kirsty's presentation. We got in the line in the way of pressure releases or the release of stored energy. We see that with some of the things Tijs has been telling us about. We're in the line of fire if we stood under falling objects, or if we fail to establish barriers and exclusion zones, or if we disobey existing barriers. Then we place ourselves in the line of fire. And if we take no action to secure loose objects or report potential dropped objects, again, we're placing ourselves in the line of fire. And there's a key learning there for all our field crew and for ourselves if we took no action. Next slide, please. Thank you. We'll drill down a little deeper into some of the most recent safety flash incidences. We're looking here at around about 480 odd safety flashes, pretty much through the COVID time, actually, from October 2019 to the present. And you can see there the colours on the right, majority of them, well, no, sorry, about a third of them were line of fire. In fact, no, about half, yeah, but 128 were line of fire. 40 of them were line of fire injuries involving actual injury to the employees of our members. Drilling down still further, 27 were hand and finger, and there's a number of leg and foot injuries and head injuries as well, but it's on hand and fingers that I'll focus now. Thank you very much. In the next slide, and I will only change when I give you the nod, there's 21 line of fire injuries to workers' fingers and hands. 6 of them were LTIs. And what cost, what human cost to our members and our members' employees? Broken fingers, crushed fingers, lacerations, trapped and bruised bits of fingers, hands torn off or amputated. It's not being made up. When I sent this presentation to one of my colleagues to look at it, she thought there'd be lots of gory pictures, and she was saying, I don't want to see that. I thought, well, no, we won't do that. There's no need, but those pictures are out there. That's people's lives have been changed. So what do we need to do to stop our people getting their hands and fingers in the line of fire? I could sound like a broken record. What do we need to do to stop our people getting their fingers in the line of fire? How do we strongly encourage that safe behavior, that safe attitude, the principle then that getting the job done is not more important than risking your fingers? Next slide, please. I won't read this out, excuse me, but even a quick look at, excuse me, it's just after. Apologies. I won't read the list out, but even the titles, and I choose the titles, I make the titles, provide you with a lot of information on what happened. Conclusions can be drawn from what looks like a sorry tale of woe. Now, I worked with someone who did a lot of work at the post office, trying to get postmen to work more safely, not get their fingers bitten by dogs, not fall off their bikes, that kind of thing. You know, and he said to me, he said, Nick, it's not rocket science. Next slide, please. There's a tendency to make safety more complex than it is. I stand against it. You don't need a top set analysis or a bow tie diagram to see what went wrong in many cases. Of course, detailed analysis can and does reveal important insights, but we can see here that in half of all these cases, someone injured themselves either because workplace or equipment wasn't designed to prevent such injuries, or because the risk assessment was deeply inadequate. Another factor I might come back to again and again, and it's a trend you see when you look at a lot of safety flash incidents, is what I call task seen as routine. We've done it before, we know what we're doing, we're experienced, until all of a sudden, bang, nine-fingered Frodo. Right back to my friend the plumber at the beginning, who made a lovely slice in his finger by not putting his gauntlets back on. I would add that as a small disclaimer that this information is not statistically authoritative, it is indicative. It's most interesting also to see that in Kirsty's data that risk assessment or inadequacy of risk assessment is a significant causal factor. So what could we do better? How do we stop all this from happening? Next slide, please. Thank you. These are my conclusions rather than IMCA's, but I'd outline three things. Firstly, I think safety by design. It's very often equipment's just not designed, or situations aren't designed for the operator or the worker's hand safety in mind. Well, I know it's costly and to redesign, it's costly to do things like that, but our primary focus ought to be on designing the risk out. And it's interesting to note that Tijs noted earlier that design issues are a problem in process safety as well, and we do acknowledge that there may be more complex issues at stake. Second, we need to ensure better risk assessment. If we can drop back up one, please, thank you. Better risk assessment. Are our workers daunted or put off by risk assessment? Because it's clearly not effective in a lot of cases. Some people perhaps are going through the motions. How to improve that? And still others are missing things that could harm them. Again, as Tijs notes, identifying situations that are not in line with safe fundamentals. Let's start a discussion. How do we do that? How do we move away from getting the job done being more important than our hands and fingers? And thirdly, then, we need to, that's just what I've just said, we need to value our hands and fingers more than our work. We've just seen someone from a certain company being described as a shameless criminal by an MP. No one but a shameless criminal would ever tell their workers that getting the job done is more important than risking their fingers. But still, they are risking their hands and fingers, be it through complacency, be it through missing something obvious, be it not thinking properly or having poor situational awareness. So let's look at finishing off by seeing what our members did in fact do. Thanks. Improving design comes at the top. I think I can think of a case where someone got his fingers nipped in a lifting operation involving drums, oil drums, and the result was that someone designed rather a clever piece of equipment that enabled them to be lifted hands-free. Sometimes it's a quick, easy win. I like the coloured floor, the physical barriers. in Tijs's presentation. That was a good slide. I was reminded of an incident we published a while ago where an engineer went to open in an unmanned engine room, went to open some equipment wearing shorts, and a whole bunch of slurry came out and badly burns him. These things, that's precisely the kind of thing I mean, what the Tijs means. Now, it may be that risk assessment needs revising, or needs relearning, or actually following through. Our members instituted further training, or they changed procedures to eliminate the hazard. Two things in there that are fairly low on the list, fairly small, but I think they're anomalously low, but deeply important. And one of them is the need for better communication. That's another trend I can see after looking at safety flashes for year on year on year. And the other is better use or good use of the stop work authority. And I know that can be difficult to achieve for cultural reasons in some parts of the world. So on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in brief conclusion then, I think there's a great deal of line of fire incidents are hand and finger injuries, and it's fair to say that we have a way to go before we can eliminate what the UK's Health and Safety Executive will call completely preventable line of fire related hand and finger injuries. So what do we do now? Again, I think we'll reiterate those same points. Build it right the first time round. Improve the way people identify risks, the way they assess risk, the way they become risk aware, they have given better situation awareness, and improve their training towards better communication, towards understanding why we do the way we do certain things, and towards being more prepared to stop the job. Now, finishing off, I'm a scout leader, and sometimes we'll have 15, 20 young people in a room, and we'll have them working with knives or axes or saws. Your parents' blood right one cold. And we'll say to them, okay, boys and girls, how many fingers are in the room? And they'll do the maths and they'll shout out 100 or something like that. And then I'll say, and how many fingers do I want you all to go home with tonight? Thank you very much. And any questions?
Thank you very much, Nick. Right, so I think we've got a few questions in the chat. So if you do have a question, please do post it in now. I see we've also been joined by, it looks like a few additional people who've joined the webinar late. I do wonder if that's because we're now in summertime in the UK, and so if you're based elsewhere, such as in the US, the times may have changed. But don't worry, you can catch the recording of the webinar in a few days' time. So if I can ask our speakers to sort of turn cameras on and microphones on, and we'll ask a few questions. So what I'll do is, there's a couple of questions I'd like to ask actually, but what I'll do is I'll start off with one from the audience. So first question here, and I'll just go in order, I think. I think this one is for Kirsty. So does the stored energy category or cause, is that included in the line of fire category?
Okay, so there is no actual IOGP category for stored energy. But what I was doing when I looked through these 194 line of fire events was to read the narrative descriptions, the causal factors, the what went wrong, the corrective actions, and then try to almost build a kind of line of fire taxonomy so that we can put the line of fire incidents into particular buckets which help us identify which ones are where. So for the stored energy ones, we've got quite a few, related to people trying to hold things in place which are way too heavy, and gravity will always win. Examples would be, there was one with large sheets of marble. There was another one with, huge big steel sheets, another one with a concrete post that they didn't have a crane available to site the post into a hole to cement it in place. So 6 people decided to hold it up, and again, gravity won. So there's a lot of these ones in relation to people trying to, to hold things in place that they shouldn't be. Others were, in the process of taking something apart, that the actual structural supports and what it was keeping the thing in place in the first place were deliberately being removed without thought to the poor person who was actually removing the bolts or slings or chains. So it's another level of analysis of the line of fire incidents rather than an IOGP specific cause category. There was quite a lot, looking through them a few times, quite a lot happened to fit into that bucket, so I thought it was worth pointing it out.
So Stuart, let me add a little bit on this, because I think it is exactly what it is: stored energy. Whether this is mechanical energy, whether this is potential energy, whether this is pressure, whether this is electrical energy, it is stored energy. Understand that and stay out of it, stay away from it. So I think the definition is very well phrased.
Yeah, thank you very much. So just a quick question, or maybe it's a quick question, I don't know. So obviously line of fire is quite a broad category. It seems to cover quite a broad range of different activities. In your experiences, are the majority of line of fire incidents, do they happen mostly around routine activities or routine tasks?
I'd be hazardous to say yes, that's correct. And that's something that does come up. But we, particularly with the smaller, less, I can't speak for fatalities, but when we start injuring people's hands and fingers and their arms or their legs, yes, indeed, it is. They just didn't think it is precisely that.
I see some nods, but thoughts from the others?
Yeah, well, let me add a little bit. I think when you're talking about the regular maintenance work, like cutting and also working at height and lifting equipment, there lots of it is routine. In terms of process safety, it's always special, because we only open equipment when this is non-routine and exactly what you don't want to have, and that's when you have the issues. It's when you have releases that are very rare occasions. So these are the hidden traps, I would say, things that happen maybe once every 10 years, and then you need to stay out of the line of fire. So there it's a little bit maybe a little bit different.
No, I echo what Tijs is saying there, because I think on the process safety ones that have been reported to line of fire, related to that line of fire life-saving rule, have mainly been not in normal operations. But for the personal safety ones, they are very much kind of routine, day in, day out type tasks, like truck loading, storing of tubulars, handling of tubulars, working around mobile equipment. And I think to an extent, that there's people get used to those kind of activities on day in, day out, and because nothing has happened to this point, maybe they start to get a little bit complacent about the damage that can be done with a truck maneuvering or a piece of construction equipment or a road grader. I mean, if your job is to stand and wave a flag at a road grader driver day in, day out, I'm sure the last thing you think is that you're actually going to get run over by it. I mean, we've had at least 3 fatalities related to unexpected movement of trucks, where people have been, lying in the shade or sleeping or having a little snooze at lunchtime, underneath or in the shade of a truck. And you don't expect, not expecting the thing to move, the drivers jumped straight in the cab and driven off. And as I said in the presentation, 3 of them were completely unattended trucks. So just not having put the parking brake on, or, not used chocks. And, it tends to be very, on the personal safety side, definitely tends to be very routine activities, for sure. I think there's a lot more emphasis put on planning the non-routine activities as well.
I think you may have answered the next question, actually, which is around moving mobile vehicles, and why is it, do you think, those responsible for guiding them are the ones that themselves have been perished Any further thoughts on that, which you think you've covered?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, there's a little bit of the kind of getting used to that kind of situation. That's based on the narrative descriptions that we've had. Drivers have been distracted. The signalmen themselves have been distracted, and there's some absolutely classic human factors involved. And there's some great guidance, fantastic guidance from Energy Institute on human factors. IOGP's also got a really good publication as well about demystifying human factors and incident investigations, which again is free of charge, and it's a really good read. But I think it's these kind of things that we need to. It's easy to say to someone, keep your situational awareness high, but what does that actually mean when that's your job all day, is to stand behind a moving vehicle? So yeah, I think the slightest little bit of distraction on the part of the person holding the flag and the person driving the truck, and you're in a situation where that there's no return. You can't go back and fix it. So yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's definitely a fantastic opportunity for replacing a person in those kind of situations with technology. And if a truck hits another truck, or a truck hits a stationary object, then so be it. You can recover from that. You can fix it, but you can't fix it if it's a person that's been run over.
Is there a tendency to so as you was going through, as you were giving your presentations, I was trying to note the actions that were on the individual and the actions that were more sort of company focused, things like design and stuff. Is there a bit of a tendency to perhaps place too much emphasis on the individual staying out the line of fire and not enough on organisations making sure that those situations don't occur? Any of you could.
I'll go first then. Yes, I completely agree with that. Yeah. I think there's been some good examples there from the process safety side that Tijs has mentioned, and also Nick's mentioned as well with hand and finger injuries. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of new technology available where you can actually far better identify the kind of red zones or danger zones around pieces of equipment that are moving or have the that kind of potential energy release. That yes, we can definitely do better, and keeping people deliberately out of those areas is something that can definitely benefit from some design changes for sure. I guess the thing is, if we keep blaming the individual and that individual no longer works there, then you haven't actually improved the safety of the workplace for the next person who replaces them. And don't be surprised if the same thing happens again, because it's one of the things that really struck me going through these 194 incidents, is that are very, very few have never happened before. Mainly all repeat incidents. And it's very sad that we're not, as an industry, really learning to prevent these.
Thank you. So the question here, I think, is probably for Tijs. So could you explain why line of fire is part of the process safety fundamentals? Line of fire is about personal safety, while the process safety fundamentals is about keeping products in the pipe.
That is true. That is true. So it's a little bit one which seems to be a little bit out of the box. On the other hand, we are here talking really about hazardous relating to things that come out of the pipeline unexpectedly, and things like that are where we say opening installations, when a pressure safety valve goes off, when a breaker plate is breaking, when you open a manhole. So we have a number of situations where things get out of the pipeline, maybe on purpose, maybe by accident. But these situations, we felt the need to raise awareness and to minimize injuries as well. So typically, staying out of the line of fire, people say, hey, don't walk under hoisting. If you have moving equipment, then stay far away out of that. So it's the but we tend to focus here on the stored energy from pressure, the stored energy from steam in systems, and we know the steam gets out. Look to an operational site. You see the steam plumes from a big distance on any clear day. So things get out of the system, and that's the focus on that they would like to add, and we think it's important enough to make a separate process safety fundamental on it, and to have a separate discussion with the operational and maintenance people on the topic.
Thank you. So this question is for Nick. Is it universally acknowledged that workers may need to place themselves in the line of fire because of badly designed equipment?
That's an interesting question, which I don't plan to answer directly and explicitly, but I'm sure there are circumstances in which we do need, or the workers do need to place themselves in the line of fire. But whether it's universally acknowledged is another matter. I think we just touched on that earlier. There may be a tendency to shift blame. Is it the design issue, or is it the personal responsibility? And there's something of both to be said there, but there's a balance to strike. But how that balance tips it may change over time as safety practice grows and develops. So today, I think, to me, the balance ought to be in favour of making things hands-free as far as possible, and making things safe by design, rather than placing the responsibility on the employee.
Okay, thank you. So what are the biggest obstacles that prevent good practice from being shared concerning process safety events?
Yeah, well, would you like me to to get? Yeah, it's this is a big thing. What Kirsty is saying, many incidents are repetitive ones, and that's true for process safety as well, which doesn't solve the thing by saying that. If we're going to drive, we know incidents happen in traffic, and then it doesn't mean that we say we don't learn from it because we know the incident happened, but because of the high number, even at low statistics, low probability, people get injured. So things which occur many times, they don't go always right. It's very hard to read Six Sigma and really say this is beyond once in a million that things do not go wrong. To reach those kind of numbers is hard. So that a little bit about the repetition. The other thing of truly learning, if there is an incident, then yes, it's true that especially from chemical incidents, company become they're ruled more by lawyers these days that say, hey, I tell you what to say and what not, and especially when it's a lethal incident with a fatality, that basically means that the first 5 years you cannot talk about it, and probably the first 10 years the legal case is not settled, and then the legal people tend to stop the learning process, the formal learning process, for the first 10 years, and I think that's not a good thing. Now I know that people like OGP are behind the legal process, and EPSC tends to do that as well. So there are good associations that share behind the scenery the critical learnings as soon as they can from incidents, but that stays away out of the eyes of the public. So yes, the industry tends to learn as soon as possible, but not fully in the eyes of the public. That still is very much related to the legal cases sometimes that are there. So I guess that's a little bit of the situation.
When carrying out risk assessments, when planning works, so particularly thinking about line of fire hazards, so what assumptions should be made about the basic competence of the workforce? So Nick, sorry.
I can do that one. I think you know, even if people are technically competent in the activity that they're about to do, I mean, speaking as a contractor, you know, we can be working on, you know, a variety of different work sites doing the same task. So it's not just about basic competence, it's also about the, you know, the work site itself and work site familiarization and the recognition of other, you know, activities that are maybe going on around you as well. So that there's some really good little tools that are available through the HPOG, the Human Performance Oil and Gas website. One in particular called Walkthrough Talkthrough, which kind of takes your toolbox talk to a different level. You know, asking the crew to look at you know, not just what we're about to do, but how are we about to do it, and what could make the job more difficult. And this is also where the IOGP start work checks come in as well, is to make sure that some of these critical issues or activities as part of a job task are checked by a member of the crew and then verified by somebody else as well before going ahead. That not only is it one set of eyes, but two sets of eyes, you know, the same kind of way that the pilots do using dual assurance type checklists. You know, and talking through the job, I think with that kind of mindset as to, you know, what could hurt us, how are we going to deal with that, what we're going to do if something goes wrong, how can this job be made more difficult, and how can we avoid these situations to start with, in combination with a checklist, definitely, you know, will make a difference. And you know, some of the feedback we've had from the companies that have been using this kind of start work check approach before has been extremely positive. Even some of the companies that are, you know, contemplating implementing that approach have found in pilot projects that you know, despite having permit to work and having, you know, shift, you know, pre-shift meetings, toolbox talks, task assessments, risk assessments, they've still caught some things and maybe prevented some incidents. So it's yeah.
Oh, thank you. And Nick, you talked about training as kind of bit, you know, in your presentation. Any thoughts about what you think perhaps we need to be training workers about when it comes to line firing?
I think there it's the whole human factors piece that Kirsty was talking into there, and there's a question there on the screen there. What do we need to do differently? I'm thinking it's how we move beyond what is it like the going through the motions toolbox. We've all done, we're going to do this, we've all done that, we know what we're doing. It's how do you get people to stop and say, this is live stuff, this is real stuff. It's not something that you could take for granted. So it's training in that, and it's a human factor thing, in the sense it's a personal, cultural thing, rather than it's not about doing anything differently in a technical sense, but it's doing something differently in a human, personal sense. And I still think there must be learnings we can take from the airline pilots, and also from the surgeons and the nurses in the theatre. Again, I've been reading about that, where you've got levels of toolbox talk at pre-op in a theatre, and the head nurse can call time out on what the surgeon's doing. Stop. You know, and you've got that. There's maybe lessons to learn there, training lessons to learn there on structures of power within the workplace. How, you know, we need to stop here. Let's take a step back. That kind of thing.
So sort of crew resource management type training. I think they have that in the marine sector as well. Bridge resource management?
Yes, that's an actual thing for sure. Yeah.
Well, speaking of repeat incidents, then, so we're still having repeat occurrences. So from your perspective, this is directed to all of you. What do we need to be doing differently to prevent these repeat exposures?
I think I find like I'm answering the same question twice. Yeah.
Well, I would say we've always new people, and we need to raise awareness at all the new people, which can again make the same mistakes. I think many incidents when people occur the incident, they have not seen the previous incident happening before their eyes or read. So sharing these learnings from incidents is still a major task that we need to continue to do. And So how people can also find the time to read all these incidents and digest all these learnings, and then hopefully at the moment they need them, they make the right decision and they recall the hazard and the incident.
Yeah, absolutely on the sharing, and I think that's a drip little April shower scenario. So you can't, if you apply a wall of information at someone, maybe one little bit of it will soak in. So it's just getting one little one incident at a time to soak in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's building that information back into training programs and building it into the toolbox talks and the safety meetings, and making sure that you're giving relevant information to relevant people, ideally at a time where they're going to really pay attention to it. So I think there's a lot that we can do with that, and even if we just focus on some of these ones that do repeat most often, just getting that message across, I think helps people to think a little bit differently about the situation that they're in and the activity they're about to perform.
Okay, great. There was a question there that just disappeared about whether the Toolbox app has any line of fire incidents on it. Yes, there's loads. There's a line of fire category on the Toolbox app, and there's probably a huge number of incidents in that category. So the last question here then is what's the primary difference between the EPSC Process Safety Fundamentals and the IOGP Process Safety Fundamentals?
Yeah. Let me try to phrase it a little bit and throw a little bit of history in there. When Shell had the big incident in Moerdijk, which is maybe now 8 years ago or something, they said we need to bring down process safety more to operational excellence, and they said we're going to do that with the process safety fundamentals, which they developed and there over time, and they shared that work with OGP, and OGP brought a couple of things, but then it is closer to the oil and gas conditions and their key things, because they only have like 8 or 10 process safety fundamentals. EPSC was aware of that. We had people in both working groups, but we thought let's define them ourselves from a chemical industry perspective, which also include, let's say, the people from smaller batch reactors, and so it's a little bit more not only oil and gas, but smaller industries as well. Further on, we have made a larger set of things, and it is more detailed towards the ground. So we tend to stay a little bit further away from the process safety management system, like MOC, for example, is a process safety fundamental at OGP. We said that is a process safety management system, and should stay a little bit further away from the operators and any mechanical people. We tend to really say hands-on things which they can then intensely discuss, and are very closely connected with in their doing, in their operation, in their handling, in their awareness, in their practices. So it's not if you are in oil and gas, probably you start with the OGP ones. If you're in chemical industry, you might have a look to EPSC first. So that's maybe a thought.
Okay, thank you very much, Tijs. So, well, that brings us to the just a few minutes over time. So I'd like to thank our speakers. So thank you, Nick. Thank you, Tijs and Kirsty. Really interesting, great questions from the audience. Just a reminder, the recording will be available in a few days. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, rest of the day, good morning, wherever you are in the world.